1890, a ship approached a quiet island off the coast of what we now call North Carolina. The man standing at the front of that ship had been here before. 3 years earlier, he left behind over 100 people, men, women, and children, trying to build a new life in a strange land. He expected to see smoke rising from chimneys, children running near wooden fences, guards watching the shoreline. Instead, there was silence. No movement, no sound. The wind moved through empty trees. As the boat came closer, something felt wrong. The settlement was still there, but it felt hollow, abandoned. The houses stood, but something about them was different. Carefully taken apart, no bodies in the streets, no signs of battle, no desperate message scratched into the dirt. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest. And then, carved into a wooden post, one word: Croatoan. That was it. No explanation, no names, no blood, just one word. And over 400 years later, we still don't know what happened to the lost colony of Roanoke. 3 years earlier, everything had felt hopeful. England wanted power in the New World. Spain was already building an empire, claiming land, gold, and influence. Queen Elizabeth needed her own foothold. So in 1587, 117 settlers boarded ships with dreams bigger than fear. Families traveled together, skilled workers, farmers, carpenters, and among them, a pregnant woman named Eleanor Dare. When her baby was born on Roanoke Island, they named her Virginia Dare. She became the first English child born in America. Imagine the excitement, the pride, the belief that history was being written. They built homes, they planted crops, they tried to build relationships with local tribes. But the land was unfamiliar. Food was scarce, supplies ran low, tension grew with neighboring native groups. The colony needed help, badly. So the governor, John White, made a difficult decision. He would sail back to England for supplies, and return quickly. He promised them he would not be long. But the ocean does not care about promises. When White reached England, disaster was already unfolding. War had broken out with Spain. The Spanish Armada threatened invasion. Every available ship was needed for battle. No one could spare a vessel for a struggling colony across the ocean. White waited, and waited. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. Imagine the weight on his mind. He had left behind his daughter, his granddaughter, baby Virginia Dare. Friends, families who trusted him. Every delay must have felt like betrayal. Finally, in 1590, he secured passage back to Roanoke. The journey was rough. Storms pushed the ship off course. When they finally sighted land, White prepared himself for bad news. Maybe disease had spread. Maybe the colony had been attacked. Maybe only a few survived. But what he discovered was something far more disturbing. Because death leaves evidence, war leaves scars, but disappearance leaves questions. As White and his crew stepped onto the shore, they found no sign of struggle. The fortifications were gone. The houses had been dismantled carefully, not burned, not smashed. It looked planned, deliberate, almost calm. There were no skeletons, no shallow graves, no broken weapons, no bloodstains. If violence happened here, it left no trace. White searched desperately for clues. He had instructed the settlers before leaving that if they were forced to move, they should carve the name of the destination somewhere visible. And if they were in danger, they should carve a cross above it. There was no cross. Just the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post. and crow carved into a tree. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, and also the name of a friendly native tribe. Was this a message of hope? Did they relocate peacefully, or was it something else? Before White could investigate further, a storm forced his ship to leave. He never returned, and the settlers were never seen again. Now here's where the mystery deepens. If they moved to Croatoan Island, where are the remains? Where are the clear records? Over the centuries, explorers searched the area. Nothing definitive. Some historians believe the settlers blended into local tribes, adopting new customs, new identities, new lives. There are reports from later English settlers who claimed to see Native Americans with gray eyes, who spoke of ancestors that came from the sea. But stories are not proof. Others believe famine struck first. The settlers may have grown desperate. Maybe they split into groups, searching for food inland. And if they did, they would have entered unknown territory, harsh wilderness, rival tribes, disease. Survival would have been uncertain. But again, no mass grave. No confirmed remains, just fragments, rumors, clues that almost connect, but never fully do. And then there is the darker possibility. What if something happened that left no survivors to tell the story? What if conflict erupted suddenly, not leaving bodies in neat rows, but scattering people into forests, rivers, into silence? We know tensions existed between some tribes and earlier English explorers. Revenge was not impossible, but if violence destroyed the colony, why dismantle the houses? Why carve a destination? Why leave no sign of chaos? The evidence suggests order, not panic, choice, not slaughter, and that is what makes Roanoke so unsettling. It doesn't look like a tragedy. It looks like a decision, a community standing at a crossroads, choosing to leave everything behind. But why? What could push 117 people, including children, to vanish so completely that history cannot trace them? Here's what makes this story even more chilling. The Lost Colony was not just a failed settlement. It was England's first real attempt at permanent colonization in America. If Roanoke had succeeded, history might look different. Jamestown came years later, and barely survived. But Roanoke simply disappeared. No heroic last stand, no dramatic final letter, just absence. And sometimes absence is more powerful than destruction. Because destruction tells you what happened. Absence forces you to imagine it. Picture the last night on that island. Was it calm? Were there arguments? Did they vote on what to do next? Did mothers pack belongings quietly by candlelight? Did children ask questions no one could answer? We don't know, and that not knowing is what keeps this mystery alive. 400 years have passed. Archaeologists have searched the island. Excavations inland have uncovered small European artifacts. A ring here, a tool there. Enough to suggest movement, but not enough to close the case. DNA testing has been attempted. Oral histories from native tribes have been studied. Still, no final answer. Every theory explains part of the puzzle. None explain it fully, and maybe that is the truth of Roanoke. It sits at the edge of history, where record-keeping was fragile, where survival was uncertain, and where entire communities could vanish into wilderness without leaving a trace. It reminds us that the past is not always neat. It is not always documented. Sometimes, it simply fades. And now, here is the question that has haunted historians for centuries. Did they survive? Did they become part of another world, living out the days under different names? Or did something darker happen in the forests beyond Roanoke Island? If you were there, starving, isolated, waiting for help that never came, what would you choose? Stay and risk death, or move into the unknown? In Part 2, we dig deeper. We examine the strongest evidence ever found. The maps, the hidden clues, the modern discoveries that might finally reveal what happened to the lost colony. Because the story is not over. Not yet. For centuries, Roanoke was just a ghost story whispered in history books. Then in 1937, something strange appeared. A tourist in California claimed to have found a stone carved with a message. The message said it was from Eleanor Dare, the mother of Virginia Dare. It described hardship, sickness, and the death of most of the colonists. It claimed they had moved inland and suffered attacks. If true, this would have solved the mystery. But then more stones appeared. Dozens of them, each with longer messages, more detail, too much detail. Experts examined the carvings. Some believed parts were authentic. Others believed it was an elaborate hoax. Over time, most historians concluded the Dare stones were likely fake, created for attention or profit. But here's the uncomfortable part, even if most were fake. What if the first one wasn't? What if the truth was hidden inside a lie? The stones faded into controversy. The mystery remained. Then there's the map. John White's original map of the region was studied carefully centuries later. Under modern scanning, researchers found something hidden beneath the surface, a small patch placed over part of the drawing. Under that patch appeared the symbol of a fort. Inland, away from Roanoke Island. It suggested a planned relocation site. This changed everything. Maybe the settlers never intended to stay on Roanoke long term. Maybe they were preparing to move even before White left. If supplies ran low, moving inland would make sense. Fresh water, better farmland, distance from hostile encounters near the coast. Archaeologists began digging in areas connected to this map and they found small signs of English presence, pottery fragments, metal tools, pieces that didn't belong to local tribes. Not enough to confirm a full settlement, but enough to suggest movement. Enough to keep the mystery alive. Another theory feels less dramatic, but possibly more realistic. Survival through blending. The Croatoan tribe, also known as the Hatteras, had friendly relations with the settlers. The word carved into the post, Croatoan, could have been a clear message, not a cry for help. White had instructed them to leave a sign if they relocated. There was no cross carved above it, which would have meant danger. So maybe there was no immediate threat. Maybe they chose integration. Later English settlers reported meeting Native Americans with unusual physical traits, lighter eyes, different facial features. Some tribes claimed their ancestors could read English. Could that be coincidence, or memory passed down quietly through generations? DNA testing in modern times has tried to connect descendants, but results remain inconclusive. Time erases evidence. Bloodlines blend, records disappear, and 400 years is a long time for history to dissolve. But let's step back for a moment. Remove the legends. Remove the drama. Imagine the reality. You are stranded on a thin strip of land. Food is uncertain. Relations are fragile. Your leader has been gone for years. You do not know if he is alive. Supplies are gone. Children are hungry. Hope fades slowly, not all at once. You gather as a community. You discuss options. Staying means slow starvation. Moving means risk, but also possibility. So you dismantle your homes carefully. You pack what you can carry. You carve your destination clearly, Croatoan, trusting that if help ever comes, they will understand. Then you walk away from the shoreline, into forests thick and unknown. And history never sees you again, not because you died dramatically, but because you adapted. You changed, you became something else, and maybe that is why Roanoke still captures us. It is not a story of massacre. It is not a story of heroism. It is a story of uncertainty. Of people standing at the edge of survival, making a decision we cannot fully trace. There was no final letter, no preserved diary, just one carved word. And sometimes, that single word is more powerful than 1,000 explanations. The Lost Colony reminds us how fragile early history was, how easily entire communities could disappear into wilderness. No cameras, no newspapers, no global communication, just silence. And when silence stretches across centuries, imagination fills the gap. So what is the most likely answer? Most modern historians lean toward relocation and assimilation. The evidence points toward movement inland, toward blending with local tribes, toward survival in a different form. It may not be dramatic, it may not be tragic, but it may be human. And maybe that is enough. Not every mystery ends in horror. Some end in transformation. But until we find undeniable proof, Roanoke remains unsolved. A blank space in the story of America. Now I want to hear from you. If you were standing on that island, watching the last ship disappear over the horizon, what would you do? Stay and hope, or risk everything and walk into the unknown? Do you believe they survived? Or do you believe something darker happened in those forests? Tell me your theory in the comments. I read them, and the best ones might inspire our next episode. If you enjoy deep, cinematic stories like this, stories where history still whispers instead of shouts, then make sure you like this video. It helps more people discover these forgotten mysteries. Share it with someone who loves unsolved history. And most importantly, subscribe to True Event Archive. Because we're just getting started. There are more disappearances, more collapses, more forgotten chapters waiting to be uncovered, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until the next mystery, stay curious.